Hi everyone! My name is Holly Darling and I am so excited to be sharing the sew along for my very first Know Me pattern. So this is it. This is ME2112. It is a woven dress pattern. It features a high squared neckline, godets in the skirt, a matching belt with a self-covered belt buckle. It also has a centered back invisible zipper and it is fully lined as well. So there's two views. View A here is the shorter mini length and view B is just a longer midi length. I'm going to be sewing view A, the shorter one, for the sew along, but the construction for view B is exactly the same. It's just longer pattern pieces, so you can follow along with whichever view you are making. That's it. Can't wait to see what everyone makes. Don't forget to tag me on Instagram at hollydollydarling, and let's get started. Okay, let's take a quick look at the envelope. It does come in two size ranges. This is the 4 through 12, and here we have the 14 through 22. And on the back, we have the fabric requirements, or the suggested fabrics, sorry. You can use a wide variety of fabrics for this. It suggests cotton blends, cotton lawn, linen blends, rayon blends, tencel, viscose blends. A lot to choose from. For the samples, this is a tencel with viscose godets, so a little drapier and softer. This is a cotton lawn with viscose godets. A little bit more body and structure, but feels absolutely beautiful on. Oh, and it does include in the yardage for contrasting fabrics for the godets, but you can choose to use the same fabric as the body of the dress. That would also look just as beautiful, but the contrasting fabric is included in the yardage. And you will also need lining fabric, cotton blends, polyester blends, etc. and lightweight fusible interfacing. And for notions, you one 22-inch invisible zipper and one 2-inch self-cover buckle kit. If you've never seen one of those, it looks something like this. And I will be going over how to use this in the sew along, so stay tuned for that. And that's it. Now we can move on to the pattern pieces and get to sewing. Taking a look at our pattern pieces, for the body of the fabric, we have pieces 1, 2, 3, and 4. For each of these, you need to cut out 2 of your main fabric and 2 of your lining fabric. And then for the rest of your main fabric, you have piece 6, which is your strap. You need to cut 2. You have piece 7, which is your front facing. You need to cut 1 on the fold. Piece 8 is your back facing. You need to cut 2. And then your belt, which is piece 9, and you need to cut 1, all out of your main fabric. And last but not least, you have your godet pattern piece. You need to cut 8 of these out of your contrasting fabric, or if you're using the same fabric for your godets, you can do that. Also, just a note, when you are cutting out your fabric, make sure you save a small piece of scrap fabric so that you can use it for your covered belt buckle when it's time. It doesn't have to be this big. Any small scrap will do. So one last step we have to prep before we start sewing is we have to apply lightweight fusible interfacing to these pattern pieces. So that would be piece 7, which is the front facing, piece 8, which is the back facing, and then 9 is the belt. So I'm going to take my lightweight fusible interfacing and I'm going to head over to my iron and apply it to the wrong side of these pieces. One more quick thing I do want to mention before we get started is I do like to finish the raw edges of all my main dress pieces. This isn't necessary because it is fully lined, but I do like to still have that clean finish on the inside, so I do use my serger to finish the raw edges. You can also use a zigzag stitch or another way of finishing if you'd like. Or, like I said, not necessary. You can leave it raw since it is fully lined. Okay, so the first step is we are going to take the 2 front pieces. This is pattern piece number 1 with right sides together. We are going to sew the center front, which if you will notice on the pattern piece, that is the side with the 2 notches. So I'm just going to put them right sides together. And we are going to sew from the top down to this large circle, which is this marking on the pattern piece. So we are going to sew from here down to the large circle and backstitch. Okay. Next we are going to take our side front, which is piece 2, and we are just going to stay stitch the armholes 1/2 inch from the raw edge, and we're going to go from the side seam up to the neckline in each of them. Side seam up to the neckline, 1/2 inch from the raw edge. Okay, here we have, I don't know if that's able to be seen, but we do have the stay stitching along the armhole, 1/2 inch from the raw edge. That just helps stabilize the armhole so it doesn't stretch out. So now we can take that center front piece that we took. You can see here that I pressed the seam open and that it is only sewn to the large dot there. It's open underneath. So I'm going to take that and flip it to the right side. And then I'm going to take my side front pieces and with right sides together, I'm going to lay them out like this. I'm going to match up the notches here and here, as well as the large dot here. So I'm going to finish pinning that place, and then I'm going to sew again from the top down to the large dot, just like we did with the center front, 5/8 away from the raw edge, and make sure you backstitch at that large dot. Open it up, and now we're going to do the same for the other side front. So, oops, right sides together, and then again 5/8 an inch from the raw edge, from the very top down to the large dot, backstitch at the large dot. So here are all 4 front panels sewn together. As you can see, I pressed the seams open above the large dot, and then under the large dot they are left open. Here it is from the right side. After that, we are going to move on to the back panel, so we can set this aside for now. Okay, to start on the back, we are going to do the 2 center back pieces, and we are going to install the invisible zipper. So we're going to be working with the center back seam, which is opposite of the 2 double notches. This side here is the center back. So the markings that we have to pay attention to are this notch right here, right above the large dot. I've marked it here with pins on my pieces. That is where our zipper should end. So the pattern does call for a 22-inch invisible zipper. You will most likely have to shorten it, or you can buy one a slightly bit shorter. So what you want to do to measure is make sure the stopper of your zipper is 3/4 of an inch from the top, and measure down to right where that notch is. Okay, so we have marked on the zipper using the notch on the pattern where we need our zipper to end. So we need to just sew over the zipper here, the coils, to create a new zipper stop. The instructions tell you to do this by hand, which you can, but you can also do it by machine. So that's what I'm going to show you. So you just put it under your presser foot with the coil up, like so. And then you can either just sew slowly or crank your wheel with a straight stitch and very slowly go right over those coils, back stitch, and just go over a few times to get it nice and secure. So now you can see on both sides there are some stitches there that creates a new zipper stop, and just trim off the end like that. Okay, and now you can see that when we lay our zipper down with our zipper pull 3/4 of an inch from the top, that zipper stop lines up with the notch on the pattern. So what we need to do next to prep our zipper is we are going to open it up. So you can see the coils of the invisible zipper like curl. So if you just use a cool iron, you can press that flat and it'll be easier for installing. So I'm gonna head over to my iron and do that quick. Okay, and now the coils are pressed open and flat, the best that I can. Now we can install the zipper. We're gonna be working with the right side of the back first, which is this piece. You want to have the right side of the fabric facing up, and then you lay your zipper down right side down. So the back side of the zipper should be facing up. And you want to lay the zipper down like this. So the side with the coils are facing inside the fabric. Like this. The zipper stop at the top should be 3/4 of an inch from the top. The stop at the bottom should line up with the notch. And you want the coils to be at the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So that'll be just, for this zipper, just slightly in from the edge. I'm gonna pin that and I'll show you again up close. Okay, so what I just did is I hand basted down the center of the zipper, and you can see here how it is lined up. We have the top of the zipper 3/4 of an inch from the top, and the bottom is at that mark. So I'm going to remove the pins. It'll be easier to sew without the pins. That's what the hand basting is for, to keep everything in place. And I'm going to show you how to sew on your machine an invisible zipper. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is swap out your presser foot for an invisible zipper presser foot. So you put this on your machine and it can go either left or right, and there are kind of like notches, and that's when you put the zipper under the foot, the coils of the zipper should line up with that notch. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on my machine, and I'm going to push it all the way over to the right. So when I put the zipper underneath the presser foot, you're not going to be able to start way back at the end. You're going to have to start above the pull a little bit. We will finish off the end part later. The needle will line up right up against the coils. And then you just sew. Again, when you're sewing, that needle should be lining up right up against the coils. That's why you press it flat, so you can get right up in there. You can see how the stitching that you just did is right near the coils. When it curls, basically hides that stitching. Since we first started down here farther, we're going to need to finish the bottom half. So I'm just going to close the zipper a little bit. And now you can do the same thing from the notch down to where you started to finish that up. Again, just put it closed. Put your needle close to the coils. And without sewing through the coils, just finish up that little bit. Okay, now that we have the zipper installed on the right side of the back, we need to install the other side of the zipper on the left side of the back. So I'm going to show you how I do this. I take this side and I flip it over kind of on top here, and then you can see I pull the zipper out, and again you want to line it up the same way. the stopper at the top, 3/4 inch from the top, the bottom stopper at the mark, and the coils 5/8 inch from the raw edge. Let me pin that and I'll show you. I'm going to hand baste down the center just like I did before, and then we will sew this side. So here we go, this side has been hand basted in. So this time I'm going to start from the top with the presser foot still all the way to the right. I am again going to put, oops, my thread, the zipper underneath there with the coils in that notch, and so that the needle should line up right next to the coils. Back stitch to start. Now this time you're going to have to stop when you get close to the zipper pull and back stitch. And then close that zipper pull a little bit. So I've closed it up a little bit. I'm going to put it back under, put the needle back down close to the coils where I left off, and finish sewing close to the coils right down to the zipper stop. Back stitch to reinforce. So now with the zipper still closed up a little bit, we need to just finish sewing that seam, that little bit between the notch where the zipper end is and the large dot. So pull the end of your zipper out of the way. I'm going to put a pin there. Also match up your large dots. Put a pin there. So you see your zipper is sewn up until this spot here, and you need to finish sewing to the large dot. So I'm going to put it back under my machine, still using the zipper foot. I'm going to push the zipper foot all the way to the left this time. And I'm going to line my needle up with where my stitching ended, making sure the raw edge is 5/8 of an inch away. And I am just going to now sew down to the large dots. Finish closing up that seam. Make sure you back stitch to reinforce. Okay, so our zipper is installed. Here it is from the wrong side and the right side. And when you zip it up, look at that. Completely invisible. Okay, let's set this piece aside for a second and get out our side back pieces. This is pattern piece 4. So the first thing we have to do, just like with the front, is we have to stay stitch along the armholes. So on both pieces, we need to stitch 1/2 of an inch from the raw edge, and you want to go from the underarm up to the neckline. You can see there, 1/2 of an inch. That is just to keep the armhole from stretching out during sewing. So now we can bring back the center back with the zipper, lay it down with right side facing up, and then you can take one of your side back pieces, lay your side back piece down with the right sides together, like this. Line up the double notches here, and you also have the large dot down here. So line up the raw edges, pin in place, and then sew 5/8 of an inch from the top down to the large dot. Okay, so there's that side sewn on. Now just take your other side back and do the same thing. Okay, here we have both side back pieces sewn on. I have pressed the seams open. They are sewn down to the large dots, open below the large dots. Let's flip it over so that the right side is facing up. I am now going to grab the front that we sewed before. I'm going to lay it down with the right sides together onto the back. We're going to sew the side seams now. So we will line up the raw edges, just like with all the other pieces. Line up the raw edges, match up notches and the large dot, and sew each side seam 5/8 of an inch from the top down to the large dot, reinforcing at the dot. Okay, so now the front and back are stitched together at the side seams. I have pressed the side seams open just like all the other seams, and they are open below the large dot. Same for the other side seam. Now let's move on to the straps. Okay, here are our strap pieces. You can see one end is straight and the other one has like a triangular shape. The flat end is the front of the strap and the triangular is the back end. So what we are going to do is we are going to just fold each strap in half, right sides together. Like so. And then you are going to stitch 1/4 inch from the raw edge along the long edge here. You're going to leave both ends open. And then you can repeat for the other strap. Stitch each strap 1/4 of an inch from the raw edge. I'm just going to quickly trim off some of the excess from the seam allowance so that it's easier to turn. You can use a few different tools to turn straps right side out. I have a couple different ones here. There's this tool. There's also a loop turner. You can also just use a safety pin, whatever method you prefer. I'm just going to use this one here, and we are going to turn both straps right side out. Okay, so here are our straps. They are turned right side out and pressed. Now remember, there's a flat edge, that's for the front, angled edge, that's for the back. Okay, so with our dress right side facing out, we are going to put our straps on. Remember, the flat side is for the front. So on the front, there is a small dot and a large dot on each side. You're going to place the strap so that the raw edge matches the raw edge of the front of your dress between the small dot and large dot, and just pin that in place. Here it is a little closer up. The straps are on, pinned in between the large dots and the small dots, and you're just going to baste across the strap in between the 2 dots on each strap. So we need to attach to the back. So I'm just going to kind of open my dress so that it's sideways like this with the side seam. You can see the front neckline and the back neckline. You're going to take your strap and, making sure it stays flat and not twisted, kind of bring it around and line it up with the 2 dots on the back too. Now you have to watch, because the back part of the strap, the dot is actually a lot farther down. That is in case you need to adjust the strap. So make sure the dot on the back strap lines up with the dots on the back. Place in between the 2 dots, like so. And the end of the strap will hang off the back neckline a bit like that. Again, you just want to make sure that strap is straight and not twisted, and then baste in between the 2 dots on the back. That side is basted in place, so now we're gonna flip over to the other side and do the same thing with this strap. Okay, so with these straps basted on, in both the front and the back. You can actually take the time to try on your dress now and see if they are the correct length for you. If they need to be adjusted, you can adjust it from the back. That's why there is so much extra strap there. You can always lower it or bring it up higher if needed. Okay, so it is time to insert the godets into our dress. There are 8 godets. As you can see here, I have finished the raw edge of all my godets. That isn't necessary exactly, but I do like to keep everything nice and clean and keep everything from unraveling. So if that is something you like to do, finish the 2 long edges of your godets. You also want to make sure you transfer the large dot at the top as well as the notches on either side. Okay, so the godets will be inserted into all these openings that we left in the skirt. They're all the same, so it doesn't matter where you start. I'm just going to pick one. So we will start with one side of each godet. So I'm going to start with this side here. I'm going to try to open that up a little bit. Now remember, on the dress, the large dot is where you finished the seams. So with right sides together, I'm going to match up this large dot right there where I finished it, making sure the raw edges are together. I'm going to pin that in place there. Back in closer. And then just line up the rest of the raw edge. Okay, so I will sew this side of the godet from the large dot right there down to the hem 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. Okay, a quick thing before I sew. I know I just showed you pinning it from the godet side, but I actually switched my pins to the dress side, and I'm going to sew from this side because I think it's easier to see where you have to stop your stitching at that large dot since the stitching is already done on that side. And also a thing I didn't mention is that when you're lining up that raw edge, there are notches that you have to match up here as well. Make sure everything is aligned. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead under my machine, 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. I'm going to sew from the bottom. And as I reach the large dot here where the stitching already is, let's see if we can zoom in there. The stitching is already there from where I sewed the seams of the dress, so I am just going to slowly approach it and stop and backstitch. That whole time you want to make sure that the rest of your godet and your seam is out of the way. Just one thing I do want to note quick. When I said I thought it was a better idea to sew the godets from the fabric side, from the dress fabric side, not the godet side, that is just my personal preference. The instructions do show you sewing from the godet side. It really doesn't matter. You may find you prefer to sew from the godet side. I just personally prefer to sew from the dress fabric side so that I can see where those lines of stitching line up. Okay, so this side is sewn in from the dot down. So now we need to flip and do this side, making sure the right sides are together. Again, match up that large dot, notches, and align the raw edges. Same thing, 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge, from the large dot down to the hem, making sure not to catch any of the other pieces underneath. Okay, and here is the godet looks like once you've inserted it. You press the seam allowances towards the dress. You can see here how the stitches match up perfectly with the stitching of the seam of the dress. And then from the front, perfect. We are going to repeat this process with the other 7 godets, and then I will show you one last step of them. Okay, so once we have all 8 godets sewn in, we are just going to finish the top edge here. So all we're going to do, zoom in, is we are just going to turn under this top edge, and using a needle and thread, just tack it down to the seam allowance only. You don't want to go through the main body of the dress. So just turn it under and use a couple of hand stitches on each side to attach to the seam allowance. And there we have it. That's what the godets will look like inserted once they're all done. Nice and clean. You've finished the top half on the inside, and now we can move on to the lining. Okay, so it's time for the lining. So we use the same pattern pieces as we did for the main body of the dress, pattern pieces 1, 2, 3, and 4. The only difference is it does say at the bottom here to cut the lining 1 inch shorter. So if you haven't done that yet, which I have not, I'm going to mark and cut 1 inch off the bottom of all the pieces. Okay, so I have trimmed the 1 inch off the bottom of all the lining pieces. We want to make sure we mark all the notches just like we did on the main body. The only thing you don't have to mark is the large dot because we are not adding godets into the lining. But with the side front and the side back, there is a small dot that is for the lining only. That is on the side front and the side back only. So make sure you mark those for the lining. Just like with the main body of the fabric, we're going to start with the center front. So the center front seam, if you remember, is the one with the double notch, which is this side. So we're going to put right sides together, line up the raw edges, match up the double notches and the notch down here. You can pin everything in place and sew the entire length from top to bottom, 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. Now moving on to the side fronts, just like with the main fabric, we are going to stay stitch the armholes 1/2 an inch from the raw edge, and you're going to do it from the side seam up to the neckline, side seam up to the neckline, 1/2 inch from the raw edge. Now lay your center front out of your lining. As you can see, I pressed the seam open. This is right side of the fabric facing up. We're going to take one of our side fronts and we are going to lay it right sides together, matching up the raw edge and lining up the notches. We have a notch here, we have a notch here, and there is a notch down here. So line everything up. Line up the raw edge. Then you can pin in place, and again, 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge, from the top all the way down to the hem. I've pressed that seam open. So once again, with right side up, we're going to lay down the other side front. Right sides together. Okay, all 4 panels are sewn for the front lining. Now we're going to move on to the back. We're going to switch it up a little bit and we're going to start with the side back, but first we have to do our stay stitching as usual. So armhole 1/2 of an inch from the raw edge, side seam up to neckline, side seam up to neckline, 1/2 of an inch from the raw edge. You're going to do one side of the back at a time. So here are the two center back pieces. I'm going to start with this one here. And remember, the center back is the side without the notches. So we're working with the side with the double notches. Lay one of your side back pieces on top with the right sides together. Again, as usual, line up those raw edges, match the notches here and the double notches here. You can pin in place and then sew from neckline all the way down to hem, 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. Okay, so this side is done. I have pressed that seam open. So now let's repeat the same process for the other side. Okay, we have our two separate back pieces. We now need to do the center back. So I'm going to put them right sides together, lining up that raw edge. Now we will not be sewing the entire length of the center back because we need to leave the top open for the zipper. So on the pattern, there are two notches towards the bottom. There's a lower notch and an upper notch. You can see it on the fabric here and here. We will be stitching from the upper notch down to the hem only. Upper notch down to the hem, 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. Okay, so we have all four back pieces put together with the center back open above that upper notch. So now we can do the side seams. So we are going to take our front 4 panels with the right sides together. Go ahead and lay that down. I'm going to turn this so maybe you can see a little better. Right sides together, we are going to match up the notch here. And then here is the smaller dot, the smaller circle that was on the pattern piece that I told you had to mark for the lining only. We are going to sew each side seam 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge from the top down to that small dot, reinforcing at the dot. Okay, I have sewn both side seams at 5/8 of an inch to the small dot, leaving a slit open on both side seams. And I have pressed each of the side seams open where the stitching is. So now we need to finish this slit. So I'm going to try and lay this open like this. What you're going to do is you're going to press this remaining edges. I'm going to press it at 5/8 of an inch on each side. Okay, so I have pressed each side over 5/8 of an inch. You can fold it under again by about 1/4 of an inch. Just fold it under and press like so. Like that. I'm going to take that to the iron so you can see that. So here it is folded under again. Zoom in a little. So basically all you're doing is you're just taking that raw edge that you had when it was out 5/8 and you're just tucking it up and under about 1/4 of an inch and hiding it in there so it's a nice clean finish. So now you are going to go to your machine and just stitch close to the edge, up one side, square off at the top, and stitch down the other side. Okay, I'm not sure if you can see that on camera or not, but you can see how the stitching is close to the edge. And then as we come up to the top here, I just squared off, went across the top, and then back down to the hem. Okay, so I repeated that with the other slit, and now we are going to move on to the facing, and we will come back to the lining in a second. Okay, moving on to the facings. We have our front facing, which is cut on the fold, and our back facings were cut 2 pieces. And if you remember in the beginning of the video, we did apply lightweight fusible interfacing to the back of all facings. So with our front facing, right side up, we are going to place our back facings right sides together like this, and we are going to line up the side seams here and here, and sew 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge on each side seam. Okay, I have sewn the 2 side seams, and go ahead and press both of those side seams open so that they're nice and flat. Now the next step is we need to finish the raw edge. If you can see all of this, we need to finish the raw edge, the bottom edge of the facing along here. Now you can do this in a number of ways. You can try folding up the lower edge to the inside and stitching. You may need to clip into the curves a bit to do that. You could also zigzag stitch around the lower edge, or if you have a serger, you can overlock the edge. Okay, here we go. I have finished the lower edge of the facing. I don't know if you can see there. I did use my serger to finish that lower edge. And also a quick note, if you like to add labels into your clothing, now is the time to add one to your back facing. So I have laid my lining out with the right side of the fabric facing up. See, the seams are on the inside. And we're going to take the facing, and also with the right side facing up, we're just going to lay it on top of our lining and just match up all the raw edges while pinning in place. Moving around, we want to make sure these side seams line up. Get this pin. And then the edges should line up right here at the center back. Just going to repeat the same on the other side here, lining up the side seams. So that is all pinned on. And now we can baste the entire upper edge of the facing from the back neckline down the armhole, up the front, down the armhole, and back around to the back neckline. We're going to baste stitch that 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. So I have now set my machine to a long stitch and basted around the top edge. And I've gone ahead and pinned the lower edge of the facing to the lining. Keep the lining as flat as you can and go in sections. But now pin that, and we are going to edge stitch the bottom edge of the facing to the lining. Okay, so the facing is now edge stitched onto the lining. They are one piece, as you can see. From the wrong side of the fabric, you can see that line of stitching that I used to stitch the facing down. But this piece will now be referred to as just the lining. No more facing, all one piece. Okay, bringing our main dress back, we want the right side of the fabric facing out. And then we're going to take our lining and have the right side of the fabric facing in. So we're going to have the lining inside out. And we're going to slip the main fabric, main dress, inside the lining. Again, you want the fabrics to be right side together. So I have the main fabric inside the lining with right sides together. Starting at one edge of the back, we are going to open it up. We're going to roll that zipper out, and we're going to line up the corner of the lining with the corner of the fabric with the zipper out. And then we're going to just continue lining up the top edge along the entire dress and the armholes. You want to tuck this, it's going to be a little funky, but you're going to tuck the straps of the dress in as you go. So I'm going to pin the underarm here. You're going to have to pull that strap a little. It's going to bunch up what you just pinned, but you're going to have to pull it through a little bit so that you can pin this part. Keep pinning, lining up the raw edge of the neckline and the armholes. And when you get to the other back neckline, just open up that zipper again and then line up the corner of the lining with the corner of the main fabric again with the zipper pulled out. We are now going to go to the machine and we are going to sew everything that we just pinned, the top edge of the dress. We are going to sew the lining to the dress 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. Okay, so I'm starting at the back neckline. Five-eighths of an inch from the raw edge. Oops, what over that pinned. Just go slow and make sure all layers are nice and flat and your straps are out of the way. When you get to the corner, you're going to stop with your needle down and pivot like so. And here you can pull that strap towards you, or pull it towards you so it's nice and flat. Okay, and once you have it all sewn at the neckline, you can go in and clip any corners. Okay, so you want to clip straight across the corners, making sure you don't cut into the seam or any of the stitching, and then along the curve of the armhole, clip in about every inch or so. You want to clip right up to the stitching, but not through. So that'll allow that curve to bend and make sure you get all corners of the neckline. And then we are going to turn it right side out. Okay, so we now need to understitch. So you just want to open it up so your main fabric's on one side and your lining is on the other, and you want the seam allowance to be going towards the lining. So with the seam allowance going towards the lining, you're going to stitch close to the edge of the seam, about 1/8 of an inch away. You want to start doing this about 2 inches in from the back edge. You're not going to get very far on the back neckline, but just bow as far as you can. You're not going to get all the way to the corner. That's about as far as I can go. So I'm going to do the same thing along the armhole. Again, I'm not going to be able to get very close to the corner, but I just want to make sure that the seam allowance is towards the lining, and stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the seam line. And this is called understitching. It keeps the lining from rolling to the outside. And then I'm going to just continue doing this along the front neckline and then the other armhole and back neckline. Okay, and when you get to this last part, which is the other side of the back neckline, remember you won't be going very far because you do want to stop a couple of inches from the edge. Okay, so hopefully you can see that the stitching only goes to about here and here. You won't be able to get super close to the corner. And you can also see that it is only on the facing, not visible on the outside. Okay, I have flipped the dress over once more so that the lining and the fabrics are right sides together. And I am going to just line up the edge of the center back here, that zipper. Remember, you're opening up the zipper so the coils are going towards the dress, and lining up the raw edges with the zipper coil sandwiched in between. Okay, so I have both sides of the center back here pinned as far down as I can go above that zipper stop, and the zipper coil is sandwiched in between on each side here. So we are going to go back to the machine and sew with our invisible zipper foot again, 1/2 inch away from the raw edge. You don't want to go right up to where you feel the coils because you want to give it a little wiggle room. So about 1/2 inch should be good. Okay, so I have the invisible zipper foot back on my machine and I am going to sew not right up. I can feel the coils in there. I'm not going to sew right up against the coils, but just slightly away. Okay, you can carefully clip the corner here a little more than what you've already done. Okay, I've turned the lining back to the inside and pressed everything really well, making sure that lining and facing roll to the inside and is not seen from the outside. You can see how the lining is completely enclosed with the zipper now. And at the bottom, right there. So now let's zip her up, see how she looks. There we go. Our lining is now fully installed and we can move on to the last few steps. Okay, let's move on to our belts. If you remember in the beginning, we did add our lightweight fusible interfacing to the back of our belt. So all we're going to do is fold it right side together. Okay, so you can't really see the full thing here, but on each end we're going to sew along the short end, pivot, and then sew along the long end. We're going to leave a little bit of an opening, maybe like 2 inches, and then do the same thing on the other end. Pivot, and then down the short end, all 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. Okay, that is sewn all around, leaving the opening right here. I'm just going to clip the corners and trim away some of the seam allowance. Do it on this end too. Okay, and then you are going to turn your belt right way around through the opening you left. Okay, you can use a tool to get those corners out and then give everything a good press, and I'll show you once it's all done. The belt is nice and pressed flat. Now I am going to use a needle and thread to slip stitch the opening closed. You can also do a machine stitch, but a slip stitch can make it invisible, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, let's move on to the covered belt buckle. Again, here is the kit I'm using. The pattern does call for a kit without a prong. This one has the prong, but I'm going to skip it for the sake of following the pattern. So let me show you. It comes with the actual belt buckle, which is 2 pieces, the front and the back. And they fit into each other like that. And then you have this guide for your fabric. Okay, so this little guide, it does have a sticky back. I'm going to take this middle piece out. So what I'm going to do, we need a scrap piece of fabric. It doesn't have to be very big. Just make sure it's pressed well, nice and flat. I'm going to flip it over to the wrong side. Now we are going to remove the paper backing from this, and I'm just going to place it down on my fabric. Make sure it's sticking good, and you're just going to trim around this. And then you also need to trim in this center area. So I'm just going to fold it in half quick to make a slit. There are 4 slits in each corner. You just need to, don't go past those lines. Next, we are going to peel off the other paper backing, leaving behind the sticky residue on the fabric. Like that. And then we are going to take our top belt buckle. Remember, the back fits into the top, so you want the top piece, and you're going to lay it on the center there so that this is sticking to the belt buckle now. And then you just want to slowly, carefully fold all these pieces over to the back side. I like to start in the middle here. The corners in here, all of these pieces need to be folded up over to the back. And now we have to fold around that outside edge. It is a little tricky with the curved, here I'm going to zoom in. I like to start at the corners because it is curved, so to get it nice I like to pull that corner in and then right around it like that. Do that with each corner. And then finish folding in these straight edges. So that's what it looks like from the front. From the back, then you take the back of the belt buckle and you just pop it in there to cover all those raw edges. So there, back side of the belt buckle and the front side. Okay, so we have our belt and our buckle. So with the belt buckle upside down, take the belt and put it down this first loop and back up over the under the middle bar here. And there is a mark on the pattern for a fold line. You can line up that fold line with the middle bar and then just fold it over. I'm going to take some pins like this. So that fold line on the pattern should be along the middle bar, and here at the edge we are going to top stitch that to secure it. So that is top stitch down here from the wrong side, and here it is from the right side, and our belt is done. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is make the thread loop belt loops for our belt to go through. You can also do fabric belt loops if you want, but the instructions call for thread loops, so I'm going to show you how to do that. So right now I'm looking at my side seam right here. Now the pattern does have markings. There are dots on the pattern for the thread loops, but you can also try your dress on and see where you want your belt to hit, and you can make your own markings. But I know you can't really see it, but my markings are right here. Now I have taken a needle and thread, and it's nice and long. It's double threaded and it is knotted at the end. So what we need to do is we're going to come up from the inside. So, okay, so I'm going to bring that needle up through the underside of the dress. I'm going to turn it over here so you can see a little bit. I am going underneath the seam allowance right into the seam, bringing it up at my dot and pulling it all the way through. Okay, so I have right here at my dot pulled my thread up through the seam allowance right at the seam there. The next thing I'm going to do is right below that, I'm just going to pick up a tiny bit of fabric. Oops. Like this, and start slowly pulling it through. But I'm not going to pull it all the way through. I'm going to keep a loop here in between my thumb and my forefinger, and then I'm going to reach through and grab the long thread, the part with the needle, and I'm going to grab that and I'm going to form that as a loop with my finger and thumb and just slightly pull to create a knot at the base there. So that created a little knot there, and I'm still holding this as a loop. The long tail with the needle is over here. We're going to continue that process. Just keep pulling through, creating another loop, pulling it down to create the knot. Pull through, create another loop, pull down to create a knot. Now as we keep going doing this, it is going to start to create a chain, and that is going to be our belt loop. So just keep going, pull through the loop to create another loop, pull it down, create the knot, pull through, and as you can see, doing that motion over and over again has created this chain. Let's see if we can get that in frame a little better. Right here, it has created this chain link type effect, and that is our belt loop. So once I have my thread loop the length that I want it, mine I just extended just slightly back past my second dot here. We need to secure the end of our thread loop. So to do that, we are once again just going to pull the longer side with the needle through the loop, but we are going to pull it all the way through and tighten that knot. If you don't pull it through and tighten that last knot, if you just pull on the side with the needle, it will unravel the whole thing. So make sure you do that last secure knot. So now we just need to secure the thread loop back to the dress. So I'm just going to bring my needle back through the seam right at that lower dot. I'm just going to reach under my dress to pull that needle through. Like that. So that is now the thread loop, and then I can just reach inside the dress and secure it. Here's my needle. This is where it's come through right here. I'm just going to secure it with a couple of knots in the seam allowance. There is our thread loop belt loop from the outside now. And your belt should fit nicely in there without too much pulling. And yes, now you can do the same thing on the other side seam, and you'll be all done with the belt and belt loops. Okay, the final step is the hem. And the instruction starts with the outer hem, but I'm actually gonna just reverse order, and I'm gonna start with the lining hem. So you do have two separate lining pieces because they're separated by the slit. So you have the front and the back piece that you have to line. So to start, I simply just turned up each of the back and front hems, lining hems, by 1/4 of an inch. That's that one side. And that's the other side. 1/4 of an inch. I'm gonna go back to the iron and press up again another 3/8 of an inch. So that's 5/8 of an inch total hem allowance. So after I press up the 3/8 of an inch, I'm just going to edge stitch close to the folded edge on both sides. Okay, there you have it. I have folded up the hem again by 3/8 of an inch for 5/8 total for the hem allowance. And then is that gonna focus? There we go. I just edge stitched close to the edge all the way to the end. And then I did that on both the front and back lining. The first thing we're going to do for the main hem is we are going to set our machine to the longest straight stitch, a basting stitch, and we are going to baste 1/4 of an inch around the entire length of the hem. You may want to do it in sections because we are going to use that long basting stitch to kind of pull on the thread and ease the curve into the hem. So yeah. So I have my 1/4 inch basting stitches sewn from the raw edge all the way around the skirt. I did it in about 4 sections. Now, looking at the instructions, right there. So the total hem allowance for the outside is also 5/8 of an inch. They tell you to turn up 5/8 of an inch and then turn that under 1/4 of an inch. You can do that, obviously. I am going to do it, my preferred way is to turn up the 1/4 inch first and then ease that in and then turn up the extra 3/8 of an inch. So now that I have it turned up 1/4 of an inch along those basting stitches, I can use those long threads of the basting stitches to just ease the fabric in, because we have to turn that curve up again by another 3/8. So I'm just going to lightly tug on this thread, and then that should make it easier to turn that curve up another 3/8 of an inch, like so. I'm going to head to my iron and do that, and I will show you that. Alright, so here we go. I have turned under that hem again by 3/8 of an inch, using those basting stitches to ease it into the curve so it lays flat. We can see, put it closer up. I have it pinned all the way around. So now I am just going to go in and edge stitch around the entire hem really close to that folded edge, all the way around the skirt. And just a reminder, whether you did it the way I did it, where I did 1/4 of an inch first and then 3/8 of an inch, or whether you do it the way it is in the instructions, where you fold it up the 5/8 of an inch and then 1/4 inch under, it doesn't matter. It's just got to remember that your total hem allowance is 5/8 of an inch and that it is turned under 1/4 of an inch to hide that raw edge. It can be done either way, it produces the same results. Okay, I'm gonna go sew that up quick. And here we have the final result. You can zoom in here. I've stitched close to the edge around the entire hem. I clipped any threads that were left over from those basting stitches and give it one final press at the hem, and that's it. This is what it looks from the outside. Nice and neat from the inside. And we are all done. So I hope you guys find this video helpful. I cannot wait to see what you guys make, what versions you come up with. Just don't forget to tag me on Instagram at HollyDollyDarling.